Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Liberal White Dudes. I am Andrew.
I'm Jared.
I'm AJ.
And we are Liberal White Dudes. We have a special guest tonight's show, author and anti-racist activist, Michelle Chalmers. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
We are going to talk tonight. The episode is anti-racism. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about some recent news before tonight's show. In between our last show and this one, Lou Dobbs lost his job.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, was the number one cable talk show host on Fox News, where they were the number one rated cable news network. Now, we talked about last time how they have dropped to number 3 suddenly, as people have moved to the more crazy platforms.
A little more extreme right-wing news.
As they start to get all sectional and spread out.
But it seems like this lawsuit from the voting machine folks is starting to do some things.
Yeah, it's swinging through. Definitely doing some damage.
Yeah, I know at first glance, I didn't think a $2.7 billion suit would be that huge for Fox News, but actually, I was listening to a report. Evidently, they're like, no, that's actually pretty hefty.
That's sizable,
I was like, oh, is it?
Yeah, because you hear about...
I just assume Fox News makes a lot of bad, terrible, dirty money. So,
I mean, when we talked about, the whole GameStop thing, and everybody's like, this hedge fund lost, $3 billion or whatever. It's like, that's not a lot of money to them. But yeah, right. $2.7 billion is kind of a lot for Fox News and their media company, especially with dropping viewership and losing advertisers. So everybody say a little prayer tonight for Fox News.
And Lou Dobbs specifically.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Will not be missed, at least in my house.
Oh, Lou.
Yeah,
There's probably some folks.
I wasn't a regular viewer. I can say that I won't lose too much over that.
He had a direct line to the president. There were multiple shows where he was just talking to Trump in front of everyone, and then Trump would go figure out how to make policy based on
what Lou Dobbs was saying.
An unelected official of just late night Fox. Oof.
Guy who was hired by Fox News to talk.
Yeah. So glad he's not doing that anymore.
Yeah,
influencing our policy. Trump and Dobbs, glad they're both not doing what they were doing previously.
They're both out of a job, which is fantastic.
All right. Anti-racism. So, Michelle, you've written a few books. Can you tell us a little bit about those first, just as sort of a starter?
Absolutely. So I have self-published. I found this really neat platform through Amazon that when there's not a book out there that you were hoping that you could share with your children, you just make your own. So that is what I did as I was raising my 2 boys when they were little. My first children's book came out in 2013. And, just looking for a book to be able to talk to my kids about human difference and why we have different color skin and what that all means. And there just wasn't anything. And so I decided that I would make one. So
awesome.
We have a platform and let me, just share, what I thought that parents might, need a tool, right? Because as parents, like we, potty training or, someone dies or a pet or
everybody poops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Go to the book.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, how can I, create a book that will help parents engage with their children about these difficult conversations that they really need to have. We really need to be having with our children very, very early. I mean, the research shows that, children's racist ideas and racist, sort of, it's fixated in 3rd grade. So,
wow.
Yeah. And so
it's super early to be a racist.
Yeah.
Is it never too early? I don't know. Anyway, you were saying, sorry.
Children, even at 6 months. I mean, we're all born with bias, and we're not going to get rid of it. It's innate in us. It keeps us, that fight, flight kind of a reaction that we have is all based on bias, what we think will hurt us. And so, these are difficult conversations, but again, it is as you begin to understand the science and you get to understand human difference and understand that human beings, all 7 billion of us on the planet are 99.99% the same. It's just an easier conversation and one that we need to have, because otherwise children will come up with their own ideas. And a lot of what we see in the media really plays into some of the fears and the bias that we have, because we don't have experiences. We don't have a lot of experiences certainly in this country because we've been segregated by race on purpose. So yeah, that's really where it came out of. And so I have, this is my first book, The Skin on My Chin, which that is my son, who's now actually there at the same age as you, second semester freshman college. He's still not mad that I put him on the front cover, but
that was gonna be my question. Is he mad you haven't changed that?
Voguing for the cover of the children's book. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's pretty
cool.
Good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, a rhyming picture book, and then I've done 2 other books on having conversations, again, specifically with Black and brown boys. And I think the positivity and the real intentional conversation that we need to have with our children, specifically Black and brown boys, about how beautiful and wonderful they are, because there's so many messages that criminalize little Black boys at 5 years old, dehumanize Black and brown boys, and make them more adult, right? We just saw recently that 9-year-old Black girl who would tell the police officers, like, I am a child, like, do you not see me? And so there's so much dehumanization of Black and brown children and girls and boys that, I felt, knowing, what it feels like to have sort of a negative, comment, and we hear about this, that, you have one negative comment, you have to say 10 to your children to sort of counteract that.
And it's hard for them to hear you because they see you as a biased source of information, right? The rest of the world tells your kids stuff, and you're like, I said that to you 14 times. And this random stranger says it once, and you're going to hear them for the first time.
But it does sink in. It does sink in, and it's important for us to sort of have those messages. And the last book that I wrote is Vitamin D and Me: How Humans Outsmarted the Sun. And so if you don't know, I definitely encourage you to Google Nina Jablonski, Dr. Nina Jablonski out of Penn.
I'm going to write that down.
Yes, she did an amazing TED Talk on the evolution of skin color. And I watched that TED Talk and was like, are you kidding me? We all have different color skin because of the sun. I had no idea. I had no idea that, I knew that we all originated out of Africa, all human beings, but I had no idea as Africans walked out of Africa to Europe and East Asia and that
Seattle, where you get no sun at all.
Right, eventually.
We had all this dark skin and tight curly hair, and as we walked out over thousands of years, obviously, this is natural selection, that our hair straightened so our scalp would be more exposed so the sun could come in, so we could absorb the sun rays to make vitamin D, and our melanin started to be born with less melanin. And so it's like, I love telling the story to children, and I love seeing the adults go, wait, what?
Right.
but the kids and just seeing the light bulbs go off, because it's so concrete, it goes with their thinking. Just tell me what it is, and if it makes sense, I'm going to totally be on board with it. And so a lot of the kids are like, wow, I had no idea that, that we were all, from Africa, that we had all dark skin, and that, I tell kids, if you line human beings out, regionally or ancestrally, right? So where our ancestors are from Equatorial Africa to the North Pole, you will literally see a gradual lightening of people.
A gradient, because that's how that works. Yeah, it's one of the things that I had to learn myself that I didn't actually. It's weird that we skip that in school. Like we don't have maybe a science class, because we talk about human biology. It feels like one of those things that we should include because it's so
absolutely
it's weird that you have to learn it separately.
It's because of the manufactured controversy around that kind of topic, or anything related to evolution, or anything related to, God not dropping his big paintbrush over every human ever, right?
Again, anything that counteracts the idea of white supremacy.
Sure, that as well. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Not to gloss over that little.
That piece of it.
Understanding our education system, But Jared, I mean, for you to even know that at your age, I was 40 before I knew it, and I'm sure your dad and AJ. When did you really know?
I was today years old when I found out that I knew we all originated from Africa. But as far as actual skin color being directly result of the sun is actually something I was not really familiar with.
Yeah. So. And if you watch,
and I'm 36, so I was 36.
Yes. See, I'm glad you learned it before I did. And it is an amazing thing. And when you watch Dr. Jablonski talk about it, and she does an amazing TED Talk, your lens changes. You just start to see things a little differently, because if we see people as brothers and sisters, I mean, we are all family, we are all related. And I don't want to be all weird about it, but
every relationship you have is incestuous.
Yeah,
that's going to be the tagline of this episode.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for the other two, but be as weird as you want, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
I knew he was going to feel that way.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's important because we certainly, I think, would treat each other differently if we really realized that we are all one species. We are all one large family. We are certainly different, all individuals. All liberal white guys are different, so again, it's important to have that understanding. I think it just you'd have much different conversations if people understood that race is a social construct, that it's not real, that there is no thing as white people, and that we made it up. Our European ancestors made the shit up.
Yeah, and the thing too is that the cultural differences is really the only difference, right? But cultures aren't consistent across skin tone. Right. And I think that's the piece that people miss, especially like white supremacist Americans talk about Western culture or like white values or whatever, and it's those aren't consistent. The white values that you have are not the same as even British people.
Your neighbor,
as your neighbor's values,
or your neighbor's.
It's not
white
a consistent. The little did you know, your skin tone actually doesn't affect your values almost at all. It's where you live and the people around you that do. And I think that piece of it is it's so weird that people miss that, to me anyway. But I think it's maybe just because they misunderstand where skin tone comes from. I don't know.
Well, I think they misunderstand where really this ideology comes from. This ideology of white supremacy comes from, because that is really the structure and the foundation of these racist ideas. And a lot of where you see white nationalists and Nazis, where their ideology comes from is a very much a white supremacist, patriarchal, Christian, racist, capitalist ideas.
Yeah.
And they bought into them.
Mm-hmm. I actually have a question. Oh, wait, go ahead, Andrew. I think you had something.
I just breathed in quickly.
Inhaled.
So our adopted children are mixed race. So we've had to deal with, or not deal with, but we've really had those kinds of conversations from very early on because they experience racism right out of the gate, obviously. You know, at a young age, they encounter that immediately almost and then have questions about that. Also, you know, their parents are white, adopted parents are white. So for them, it's like, you know, why does the guy who looks just like my dad look at me like that, you know? And like, so we've always had to have those conversations, but just speaking to what you do as far as with the work you've done in your book, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. I think sometimes people get the impression that talking about race with kids at an early age highlights it almost in a way where, I guess I'm not phrasing this right. Some people like to take, I think, a cop-out view of saying, well, I'd rather my kids not see color, or I'd rather my kids not talk about that and highlight that as an issue and just love everybody. What would you say to parents when you're introducing your book and they would say, well, I think my kid's a little young to start having these conversations because I don't really want to put racist ideals in their head at all. Yeah. You know, because that's kind of a cop-out and lazy way of saying, I don't want to have tough discussions with my kids, you know? So
because parents really don't know how to have those conversations, specifically white parents don't know how to have those conversations. But AJ, I have this conversation all the time. So just know that, you know, when I work with parents and I do workshops and how to talk to your kids about race, how to talk to your kids about human difference, you know, I use the analogy of sex. So what I say is that it used to be that we didn't talk to children about sex, that we thought it was totally appropriate to not talk to children about sex. And somehow they were going to make good choices. They were going to
magically figure it out.
They were going to know not to engage in something that, again, that they did not understand, that we did not want them to do, but we're not going to talk to them about it. Isn't that great? Let's not talk to them about it. And somehow we're going to make sure that they make all the right choices and do all the right with sex.
Yeah.
Right? There's nobody in the world as a parent that would tell you right now, should I talk to my children about sex because I want to make sure that they have the right language, that they share my values, that they understand, you know, what really this is and how this works. You would look at them like they had three heads if they said, no, I'm not going to have that conversation. And that really is the same thing. I put up a picture of Dr. Ruth.
Great analogy. Yeah.
Dr. Ruth. But I always say, Dr. Ruth. Yes. So, so that's really the analogy that I get parents to understand, that you have to have conversations with children about race and racism because, listen, the media is ready to share their values with your child and your teachers and your police officers and everyone else that you think is supposed to protect your child. My oldest son experienced racism at 6 years old by his teacher. And my old baby son experienced racism by the police at 11 years old. So as two Black children, their experience with racism were with a teacher and a police officer, two people that are supposed to protect them beside me, right? That's what we go to. And as white parents, you have, you know, I can live in that, AJ. I can say, well, you know, my children, I don't really want to talk to them about that. I don't want to bring that up to them. I don't want them to understand the way that the world is. Yeah, well, me and you raising children of color and Black and brown families, raising children of color, we don't get that opportunity. You don't get that privilege. And if you would talk to your children about race and racism, maybe this shit wouldn't happen to my kids. Okay.
Right.
You have to experience that because you told them about skin color. You told them about being fair and just and nice. So having these conversations are super, super important, and they have to happen early. And that's why, you know, yes, I've written some children's books to help, but there's so many books out there now, so many podcasts and people doing amazing, amazing work, that there's no excuse now, right? And
I'm pretty sure there aren't any other podcasts. Let's not
other than us. We're the only one that
exists. Let's send people searching for other podcasts.
Liberal white youth is the only.
The chat also makes.
If I may,
the chat
I
also
was
makes
about to say
point, that you know, we only have a small window of influence over our kids too, before they're in school and they're seeing all these other people. You have this like limited window where you are the one filling their head with nonsense. So
and not their friends and not their
good nonsense.
peer groups and stuff. Yeah.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, AJ, I'm sure your children will grow up being able to really thank you for having these conversations. I know my boys do. My boys are very much like, you know, Mom, I'm so glad that you told me, you know, really about systemic racism, about understanding that this is a system, that this isn't about me. When my 6-year-old son came home and told me, Mommy, you know, the teacher told me today that if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, that I wouldn't be able to go to my school. And this is the only brown child in his class. And the teacher points out my son and says, if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, Marcus wouldn't be able to come to this school. Now, my son came home, and what did he internalize? What did he immediately internalize? What is wrong with me?
Yeah, immediately othered from everybody else.
Ostracized. You feel like it's your fault. Yeah.
Right. And you think about Black and brown children and people in this country, that is what they hear every single day. And the amount of internalized racism that happens when you are constantly told that you're not smart, you're not good enough, you're evil, you're criminal, there's only so much that people can take. And it is totally what I have been fighting as a white mother raising Black boys is every day to make sure they understand this ain't about you. There's nothing wrong with you. You are amazing and wonderful. And that is the counter narrative that you have to have, AJ, as a white man, a white woman raising children of color. You have to have these conversations because it is working against your children, whether you know it or not. Yes.
Yeah.
And I
mean,
I agree.
It's hard. It's definitely hard, especially as white people trying to have conversations, with children of color. Because my son says to me, I wish you could understand what it would be like to be me. I wish you could walk and understand what my life is like. And I can't.
Of course. I feel that way too with mine. Yeah.
And that hurts. That hurts a lot.
Yeah.
It's my people. It's our people that are doing this.
And I know I said this to you, prior to this, Michelle, but that's one of the reasons we're out here, with this, saying what we're saying, so that other people who have this can go, hey, maybe there's something I can do, and maybe I can be better.
And call it out, Andrew.
Marginalized communities, which sort of circles back to the whole idea of being anti-racist as opposed to just not racist. And a lot of people, and we've said this before, but a lot of people walk around thinking they're not racist, right? They live in a racist system, and they perpetuate racism through supporting various racist systems. But even just thinking you're not racist and being not racist is different than being anti-racist.
Right.
Well, yes. And to be totally, I've read Dr. Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And I really love the way he talks about this very thing, about being anti-racist, that he talks about you're either racist or you're anti-racist. There is no
I've heard that standpoint.
There is no I'm not racist, because what happens as soon as you call someone in on their racism? The first thing they say is, I'm not racist. I'm the least racist person ever.
Our president. Our previous president said that.
Former president.
Yes.
Former president. Yes. I heard
former president twice impeached.
But if if your response to your racist idea or racist action is immediately say, I'm not racist, then that just, again, it doesn't work. No, you're either racist or you're anti-racist. You're either, expressing ideas and actions and attitudes that are rooted in all of us are equal. There's nothing wrong with any of us. And at the end of the day, there's racist policies that are inequitable, right? That there's an inequitable system. So you're either promoting justice and equity or you're promoting injustice. And and inequity, right? It's either or. This is a binary that we can actually really dig our feet into. And so, I like it the way that he talks about it, because it's not you're a racist, right? He tries to move it away from, again, we know the reactions of many white people to immediately get defensive, to immediately shut down, that you're calling me a bad person. No, let's stick with what you said, right? Let's stick with what you did. Let's talk about your actions, because in that way we can move it away from that, the human aspect of it, that somehow you're a racist. Well, no, let's talk about what you did. Let's talk about your ideas you share, and let's talk about how we can, create justice and equity in this space, and not continue with these ideas that are creating inequities in our society that aren't good for any of us, and they're not good for liberal white dudes.
Yeah, no.
Exactly.
Yeah, we keep making that point, is that lifting everybody else up who's currently marginalized and currently, trodden upon, basically, lifting everybody else around us makes it better for us too. Like, it doesn't have to come from a completely
altruistic, selfless,
selfless place. There can be some selfishness to having our entire
wanting
society
a better community.
Be better. Yeah,
because you lift up the society and it lifts everybody up.
Crime goes down as an example. That's better for you. If people are lifted out of poverty, that's your root there. Causing people to be continually in poverty hurts you and your community, aside from hurting them, right? If you don't care about them. Remember, if you don't care about them, famous quote.
That stuff too.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? There is selfishness in this work. And I think, to your point, Andrew, it is very important that we do understand that this is our journey, that this, to strive to be anti-racist, to strive to be, a liberal white dude trying to really use your privilege and power to change, right? And to really make things more equitable and more just. It really is an inward look. It really is being able to look at yourself and understand what whiteness has done to us, how we walk the world differently than people of color, our perceived superiority, what that does to us internally, how white supremacy has suppressed our ability to empathize and be compassionate. Because at the end of the day, when you can walk by someone, and I've lived in San Diego, I know where you are, okay? This is the largest homeless population in the country, and of children. And I used to live right near Balboa Park, and I would see the young children, okay? And as a white person, when we can literally suppress our humanity to where we walk by those people, we walk by and we know that they need homes, that they need food, that they need care. That is part of our perceived superiority and buying into this capitalist system that somehow that needs to stay that way in order for, La Jolla Coves to be such an amazing place. So again, we have to look at what this is doing to our own humanity, and that is where the journey begins. And again, this is very important work to me, and I am very passionate about this, and I
love your passion.
Yes, I love what you are doing as liberal white dudes, but I want you to understand that this really does take a deep sense of what you have lost and what is suppressed because of this system. And that's where the selfishness comes in. You're not any good to me or to anybody else if you don't love yourself. And if you aren't able to take a look at the system and see how it suppressed you. I did a workshop a few years back. I present at the White Privilege Conference every year, and I definitely recommend for you to look that up at the Privilege Institute. They're doing a virtual program in April. We need more white men at the White Privilege Conference. But I present there every year with my essay, The Liabilities of Whiteness, How White Privilege Hurts White People. And if you go on my website, you'll see the essay there. I list 23 ways that whiteness really impacts our ability to connect and understand ourselves and walk the world. And I remember after presenting, in this workshop, this white man came up, AJ, who was probably about your age, and he says, you know what I realized when thinking about all of the ways and the liabilities of whiteness, he's like, I think you need to add one to it. He's like, whiteness allows me to be mediocre. It only expects me as a white dude to just be mediocre. It doesn't expect me. I don't need to be the best self I can be because I'm going to be fine and get away with just being half-ass. And he was like, I don't want a system that expects me to just be half-ass. What kind of world is that? I want to be the best I can be, and I want to have it fair for everyone. So when I know that I get to a place where I'm, doing what I want to do, that I actually did it without suppressing and oppressing so many other people so I could get there first. And when I don't even deserve to be there because I never actually deserved that,
Right.
Bring your full ass, but don't step on anybody on the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty straight.
Well, it's just interesting. Well, it's interesting, because what I find both equally baffling and troubling is that being anti-racist is so often repackaged to be anti-white so that people can sell opposition against it. You know what I mean? There's so many communities out there that really sell. If you're and I'm like, why? I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but for me, it's so hard to wrap my head around because I'm just like, how you're able to take those kinds of leaps from being anti-racist to basically saying, oh no, if you're anti-racist, you're just anti-white, you're just anti-America. It's like, that is so far from the truth. I can't even wrap my head around how you arrived there, You
arrive there by understanding how white supremacy works, how brilliant it is, and the tactics and the strategies of white supremacy. And they're very much similar to narcissistic personality disorder and some other ways that you try to skirt away from the truth, right? So as first, when you tell someone something they don't want to hear, they're going to deflect. If I deflect away from what you're asking me to answer or asking me to look at, I'll deflect your attention over to here. So when I say, I'm striving to be anti-racist, oh, that means you're anti-white. It's not addressing anything that I just said.
Right.
It's not asking me any questions. It is deflecting. And so you have to learn the strategies and you have to learn the tool of how to bring that person back. Because at the end of the day, we want to call people in, right? I know that, Andrew, you talked to me that you've lost, some friends, some people that really
people I thought were friends.
Understand. Yeah. Well, at the same time, I'm not saying that all of those people are going to ever want to speak with you again. But if there are people that might want to, we need to be able to engage in conversations where we do call people in and we begin to ask questions. What makes that anti-white? What do you hear? When I say anti-racism, why do you think that's anti-white? How does that make you feel? I mean, it really is a conversation that we need to start having, not with everybody. And luckily we don't need everybody, right?
We just need a certain percentage, right?
Just need most people.
Yeah, with most people. But, there's people that I care about that I wish I could have these conversations with, but I know that I can't. And so I try to gravitate towards people who really don't know what they don't know and are at least curious, right? Like, okay, I'm okay with this. Like, I might have some white fragility. I might get a little defensive. I might get a little hurt. I might internalize a little bit of this and get really mad at you, Michelle. But I do want to listen. And, I feel like my job as a white person, that's my responsibility to bring my white brothers and sisters, along with the journey that I have experienced, because it's made me a better person. It has made me a better human being. And there's nobody that in the work that I do, I always ask them, okay, we went through this 5-week workshop. I'm a facilitator for White People Challenging Racism, which is a grassroots organization in Boston. And so I say, okay, 5 weeks have gone, you've gone through this program. Does anybody want to go back to what they didn't know at the beginning of the 5 weeks? And there's nobody who says yes.
Of course.
Your eyes are open, and once your eyes have been open, you can't close them again. And you get to see the world really for the truth, right? And dealing with any problem and attacking any problem, you have to see it from the truth. You can't see it from a lens of deflection and a lens of really racist ideas. So it's hard. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
But I definitely encourage you to keep working on yourselves, sharing what you're learning. I asked Andrew what books has he read of Black men and women that he could tell me and share with me. And they wanna...
I said off the top of my head right now, I'm in the middle of a promised land, which I'm not sure it counts because
I'm gonna push. I'm gonna really push back and say you have to do your work, and you can't. How are you going to be in solidarity with people of color and the struggle for anti-racism when you don't really know what that struggle is? You don't know. We don't know our own history. Go read Carol Anderson, White Rage. You want to go to
I'm a Cliff Notes person. Like every single book that you've mentioned, I could tell you sort of the gist of it from what I've read online. Like I read reviews and stuff. I don't read books. I'm going to go on record. That'll go in our next commercial. Me just saying I don't read books.
It's okay.
Carol Anderson has some great book talks on her YouTube page. You can go and listen for an hour, and she will tell you what it says in the book.
See, now you're talking.
There you go.
But it's important for us to be educated so we can have these conversations, because we need to understand really how this happened, really how we got here, and. There's, do you know what the doctrine of discovery is?
No.
I know what those words mean individually.
Me too.
Yeah. So, again, the doctrine of discovery is where you start. Start with the doctrine of discovery, because that is when this white supremacist Christian idea came to these shores. Actually came to Hispaniola, which is really Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Yeah,
but
is that the whole idea of you can't really discover something where people already live?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
It's like, I've discovered this. And the indigenous people are like, well, I mean, did you know? Because I feel like we're kind of already here. Eddie Izzard does a whole bit on that where he's like, do you have a flag? No flag, no country.
Yeah.
Well, it's just them, trying to justify why they would colonize an area, and it's just like there's no justification for why you're colonizing.
And they're like, hey, there's resources here we don't have. We would like to have them. The people here can't defend themselves, so I guess we just get this now. Yeah.
I mean, we have the guns.
Molasses.
If I may too. The thing that's always interesting to me about like racism and sexism and all that is that I feel like people don't understand how badly that affects everyone. I think, we talked about how like how white privilege isn't exclusively a good thing. There's bad things about that too. I think the same thing about like, masculinity. Like there's like stuff about this, you guys, that this is not good for you. It's not the best way it could be. So I think, pointing that stuff out is really important.
As women. We talk about, about and how they just don't get it. And that, that's a disconnect. And that affects our relationships. It affects relationships between men and women, 100%.
Our incestuous relationships.
Yeah.
That's what I learned on this show, Michelle. That's the big takeaway.
That's the takeaway.
That's not right.
Oh my.
I really respect that, and I really love to hear that from a young man, because it is important. It is very, very important. We, again, all of us have been socialized to this patriarchy and to this male supremacy. Even, myself, you'll see a lot of women, and specifically white women, uphold that masculinity, that patriarchy. it's part of our own oppression. And,
I was raised in a very conservative, right-wing Christian home. My father's a minister. So I watched my mother play that role also her whole life. And to this day, they were Trump supporters. And, and I remember trying to have only one conversation with my mother prior to the 2016 election, and just thinking, I have daughters, you're a woman, if for no other reason, could you maybe tell me you're not voting for him because of that? And it's like, no. It's just so, I'm just like, wow, what a disservice to even just your own gender.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that in Congress right now.
Yes.
Republican women in Congress who are supporting a system that, benefits the patriarchy, benefits. I mean, they're white, so they are, fighting for a certain system for them, I guess. But
it is interesting that Marjorie Taylor Greene, was expelled, and that 11 Republicans came over. The system is very okay with getting rid of white women. So
sacrificial lamb there. Yeah.
It's a good point, Michelle. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and there has been a lot of focus on the 11 Republicans who voted for removing her from committees. The other number is a lot more troubling, the ones who didn't, right? I mean, I don't know how you watch any of this stuff. And of course, who's the House Majority Leader now? I forget. But he trotted her Facebook post that had, the squad and her holding an AR-15. He trotted that across the floor of Congress and showed, her Republican colleagues, like, this is who we're talking about. Somebody who was basically threatening the lives of her colleagues before she came here.
Right.
Women of color who sit in this house. Why are we even having this discussion? And yet only 11 of them were like, yeah, maybe she's not great. Yeah. I mean, we've sort of tread on her a bit. It doesn't hurt to say once again how terrible she is, I guess.
Yeah.
White supremacy playing out right in front of our eyes. And I think that the more that this happens, as horrific as it is and horrible as it is, and how it just hurts that Black and brown people, just have to endure this constantly is just awful. And at the end of the day, it really does have to surface in this way. Trump didn't create white supremacy.
No.
White supremacy created Trump.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand the disease and the symptom, and being able to, understand that, see that, how it plays out. And so when we see 200 Republicans support, again, this white supremacist system, it's really the system. It's you have to play in the system. And that's what we need to dismantle. We really need to dismantle the system for all of us. And it's through being anti-racist is attacking the policies that are in place, the system, the policies that are set up that allows this to happen. It's always interesting to me that no matter what would happen in the Senate or in the House, there was always a policy that the minority, Republicans could put, we have the filibuster, we have reconciliation, we have this, that, and the third. There was always something that would allow them to, again, continue this charade of power.
Right.
Stop progress.
Yeah. And that's what we're fighting against. And I think that, calling people in on it, really, I hear your tool of deflection, and I'm not letting you go there, or, why I'm not okay with that. And this is what I need you to hear. So it is, I think, as white men, your opportunity to, again, you have to educate yourself. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. And it is a lot of work. And Andrew, I get it. That reading, I'm not an eye reader either. I told you I'm an ear reader. I love listening to books on audio. They're free at the library, but I'll give you some resources to read. Just things that have helped me along on my journey that really helped me to see what I didn't see. And so with that, you're able to, again, look at the racist systems that we all live in that are oppressing all of us, and being able to make change through these conversations, through this platform you have, by looking at your sphere of influence. What can you influence? What policies can you influence? What policies are affecting your life right now? Jared, you in school, AJ with your children, Andrew, whatever work that you do. How can you really strive to be anti-racist and look at the policies that are affecting people? Because that's where you're going to make the change. That's where the change will happen. The racist ideas, will come along once the racist policies have changed and more equity and justice can happen.
Yeah, I like your optimism as far as that goes. We keep fighting against it, and we have a lot of conversations amongst ourselves about whether because it gets passed down from parent to child, and sometimes you catch some children in there where their parents are racist, but they somehow found a different path or a different message. But as far as changing parents' minds, yeah, there you go. AJ's a great example of that. Jared too. Wait. No. But trying to talk to adults. I mean, I do my best there, but you're right. The whataboutism is so strong, and especially again, it's really just ramped up. I said something about what the sort of argument you're making has sort of a basis in whiteness, and they were like, "What about Nancy Pelosi?" I was like, "That's not even close. Like, not even close to what we were talking about.
Not even equitable.
Not even in the ballpark."
Off topic.
I've had two separate conversations with people in my life that have said things that are racist, and I was like, hey, that's a racist thing to say. I had two separate conversations with two different people, and they went two very different ways. One person was very opposed to anything I had to say, very aggressive, very rude, and then decided to block me, and I haven't talked to him since. And the other person has been very understanding about it, and we've had multiple conversations going forward about that sort of thing. And I think I think that part of it is that noticing because there are those people, there's that gray area people who are saying things that are racist, but you can tell them why. If you just talk to them, you just talk it out, you just hash it out over time. The sort of a ramp down of their racist action, and I think that's important to do.
It is, Jared. It is so important to do, and please continue to do that, because that again is part of our privilege, part of really our, we created this mess. We have to uncreate it, right? And it does start with those conversations. And you're not going to get everybody, but understand that person that you did connect with, you've changed them. And I can't tell you how many people have said, Michelle, you know what? You told me things I didn't want to hear, but I am so happy that you did now, right? Because I see things that I didn't see. And that other person that might have blocked you, understand that you were still part of their journey. And so maybe what you said didn't get them at that point, but maybe the next person that speaks up, maybe the next person that speaks up. I work with a white woman who said, my friends were always trying to tell me that I was saying racist things and had racist ideas. And I just didn't want to hear it. I was like, you don't even know what you're talking about. That is not, you don't even, deflection and just, I can't deal with it. And nah. And she said, and all of a sudden she goes, something happened and someone said something to me. And suddenly all the things that my friends had said now suddenly made sense to me. And it took that person who said something at that minute, but all the people that had said something before accumulated into me being able to now understand what I didn't see before. So don't get discouraged. It is hard work. It is. It's not easy. It's not going to get easy. And you have to continue to do it, because it actually is about you. It's about your humanity. It's being able to walk the world, understanding the world around you, having connections with people that you would not have if you did not do this work. If you don't understand how you walk the world as a white person and walk the world different than BIPOC, than Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So understand that is a huge gift that you give to yourself. And I don't know if you have relationships with people of color, have friends of color, Black friends, but it really is an amazing gift to have friends who are come from different cultures, come from different ethnicities, different religions, all the different ways that we show up, sexuality, gender, all of that does enrich your life. Because just hanging out with a bunch of white people, man, that's just really
it's one of the things that we've talked about a bunch on our show, is that one of the reasons I think that each of us has empathy for people of different cultures and different races and different sexualities is because we have known those people. We know and love people who are all of those things. So it's like it gives us the capability to see the world around us in a different way than those people who have just lived in bumfuck Alabama their whole life and have never met a person of color. The only people of color they've seen have been looting things on Fox News, and it's like it's hard to reach that person at all, obviously, and they certainly don't have any sort of understanding of people of color in this country. So, and
again, that's another book that I'll suggest is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. If people understood, his full title is The Color of Law: How America was segregated by how does it go? How our government segregated America by race. That's the full title. This is racist policies by the FHA. They were government sanctioned policies. Yes, redlining.
Yeah.
Again, to your point, there are people that do not have any experience, any connection, any friendships, any, I'm not going to say you don't have opportunity, because you do have opportunity. You just might choose not to. But have no experience with people of color. And as white people, again, you're only going to internalize all of the shit that we have been fed.
And not only segregated inside of cities, but segregated to cities. I mean, again, I'm originally from a small town in Michigan, so I knew the black kid at my high school. Like, there wasn't a lot of people of color, and across the nation, when you see, the demographics of people across the nation, in order to run into communities of color, you have to be in a larger metropolitan area, which there aren't really that many, like one per state, not even. When you look at North Dakota, South Dakota, they don't even have one, right? It's like, it's a Fargo for both of them. I don't know.
But I also think Michelle's got a good point where, sorry.
No, go, AJ.
I was just going to say, though, I don't think there's much excuse now, especially with what resources everyone has. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if someone was living in a small town and they were going to say, I mean, I certainly think it's a factor, but at the same time, it's like, it's not really the best excuse to be like, well, there aren't a lot of people of color that live in my community, so I don't really have a connection there. It's like, well, you have the internet. So actually you do have a connection to that community, and there are black owned businesses online. There are black authors, there are black artists, there are black politicians. Like, so you have a 24-hour-a-day connection sitting in your hand to their community. But it also wouldn't take someone in their circle, in their life, to bring up these questions. And this is the problem, is that so many live in these echo chambers and they build these communities around themselves. I mean, the whole like anti-racism is anti-white. I saw something on Twitter recently. Those are signs up in people's communities that say that. That's not just an idea. Like, there's signs up in a community that says, hey, this is a safe community. Being anti-racist is anti-white. It's like, so I can see it being hard living in a community like that to get the, I guess, motivation to make these connections to these communities. But the more people talk about it, and the more we refuse to not talk, the more we refuse to stop talking about it, maybe eventually people in these communities, maybe young people in these communities that have these resources, will find those connections.
Yeah, I know that, not to dox anyone that I know, but there was someone that I know who is in a relationship with an African-American man, and they didn't know that, they didn't really understand what white privilege was for them until they were looking for a house, and they walked in to the house, and nobody was there to greet them. They just looked at the house, they're like, that's the house we're supposed to be in, and they walked in, and he stayed outside, and he was like, I'm not going to go in there. And she was like, why? And he's like, because and she started to realize that her lived experience is just so different, where she can be comfortable doing that in the middle of nowhere where this house is, walking inside, just not think about it at all. And it was one of the things for her that really snapped that. And I think for a lot of people, it takes those types of experiences. It takes knowing someone, it takes talking it out. And I just, you gotta reach out about those things. You gotta think about it. Please think about it, because it's important.
So as we wrap up here tonight, as we have come to the end of our segment, I would like to openly invite Michelle to the Dozens LWD March taking place this summer in Las Vegas.
This summer,
it stemmed from the Millions MAGA March, where they had thousands of people. So we are going to be the Dozens LWD March in Las Vegas this summer. Don't have a date yet. Have to get vaccinated. I give 5 out of 5 figs for anti-racism.
Same.
That's why.
All right. 15 figs for anti-racism. I would also like to give a quick apology to AOC.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
We had a different special guest tonight, so she will not be able to be here.
We did.
But we thank Michelle very much for her time. Appreciate having you on. It was great to have your perspective and knowledge as a part of our show.
The chat says it was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was fun. And please promise me that you're going to continue to
I will not promise to read books.
Don't worry, I will.
Videos that I want you to look at.
Okay. You can get me look at videos. That's something I will do.
There you go.
I enjoy books. I'll keep reading.
Yeah, ditto.
All right.
Some books.
Get those resources.
Some books.
I would love for you to take White People Challenging Racism. It's their workshop, and I'll send you the information on
Very
that.
cool.
Awesome. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
You would get a lot out of it. I think it would really help you. And we have like a white dude who's one of the facilitators. So I think that...
Doesn't even know he's walking around in LWD.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to subscribe to us here on YouTube. You can like us over on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, where we're hilarious. We are here 6 p.m. every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Thanks a lot, everybody. Liberal white dude.